Today we got some news out of General Motors that sent Uber's stock price down by almost 6%. This move came after GM announced that they would be exiting the Robotaxi market. So today we are going to discuss this move from General Motors, why it has such a big impact on Uber. We're also going to go over Uber's most recent earnings announcement, and I'm going to give my opinion on where I think Uber could be headed as a company in the future. As always, thank you for watching the video. If you do enjoy this type of content, drop a like down below and subscribe for more videos like this one. So Uber is a company that I have previously owned stock in. I currently don't own any shares, but I was originally buying back in 2020 around $20 to $25 per share, and I ended up selling out around $50 per share. It was after the stock kind of fell. I was worried that it was going to continue falling, and I ended up selling out. Obviously, that ended up being a good move because the stock did end up going back to around that $20 to $25 mark. However, from that point in 2022, it's now up almost 200%. However, in the past year, the stock has basically traded sideways. It is down around 2%, and from its all-time highs of almost $90 per share, the stock has now fallen by almost 30%. And some recent news that actually drove the stock down was an announcement from General Motors that they would be exiting the Robotaxi market. In 2016, General Motors purchased a company called Cruise. They currently own around 90% of that company, and over the years they have spent more than $10 billion on their Robotaxi unit. They now plan to fold Cruise into their broader tech team and have them focus primarily on the development of autonomous systems for personal vehicle use rather than robotaxis. General Motors CEO Mary Barra had the following to say about the business. Cruise was well on its way to a robotaxi business, but when you look at the fact that you're deploying a fleet, there's a whole operations piece of doing that. Ultimately, what she is talking about here is money. They had already spent over $10 billion on the Robotaxi venture. And when you think about the market and where it is at right now, we have Waymo, which is already in operation. That is Google backed. So there is a large player with that. Also, you have Tesla coming into the market over the next couple of years. So General Motors is behind the 8 ball when it comes to the Robotaxi market. So they are trying to pivot and still be able to capitalize on this acquisition that they made of Cruise by implementing this technology into their personal vehicles. It's very obvious how this affects General Motors, but the question is, how does this affect Uber? That is because Cruise announced earlier this year that they would be partnering with Uber to offer driverless rides. This was originally planned to be a multi-year partnership in which users could go on Uber's app and call driverless rides from Cruise. So obviously, with General Motors pulling the Cruise business internal and trying to focus more on building out this technology in their personal vehicles rather than trying to build out a robotaxi network, that clearly has an effect on Uber because they had planned for this partnership. But ultimately, does this really hurt Uber's stock, warranting a drop of 6%? The answer to that question, in my opinion, is no, because Uber is already forming very strong partnerships with large players in the market. One of those being the company that I mentioned earlier, Google-owned Waymo. And unlike General Motors or even Tesla, Waymo is providing 100,000 robotaxi rides per week. And this is from a relatively small sample size right now because they are currently only operating in San Francisco, Phoenix, and Los Angeles. They're running some small sample sizes in Austin, Texas as well, and I've heard that they're looking to expand into Miami. And these partnerships are going to be massive for Uber into the future because what Uber has done over the last 5 to 10 years is they have focused a ton on building their technology, building out their app, and most importantly, building out their customer base. They can now monetize this customer base by partnering with other companies that are looking to build out this driverless technology. What that allows Uber to do is they don't have to spend extreme amounts of capital on building out these fleets and maintaining them. They can instead focus on what they do best, maintaining their app and the technology behind it. And this should ultimately have a huge impact on Uber's numbers. They reported their earnings back on October 31st, and they beat analyst expectations on EPS by 125%, reporting $1.41 of EPS. They also beat on the top line by almost 2%, reporting $11.2 billion of revenue. Uber's gross bookings grew by 16% year over year to $41 billion. That is up 20% on a constant currency basis. They also saw income from operations hit $1.1 billion, up $667 million year over year, or $265 million quarter over quarter. And they're not expecting this to slow down. They're expecting gross bookings in the fourth quarter to be anywhere between $42.75 billion and $44.25 billion, which represents growth of around 16 to 20% year over year. And what we're starting to see from Uber is a re-acceleration of their revenue growth. Again, they're growing year over year by 20% for their top line. A year ago, they were only growing by 11% on their top line. So this is great to see that revenue is starting to grow at a faster pace. And right now, their trailing 12-month revenue is sitting just under $42 billion. But what's more exciting for investors is Uber's focus on profitability. They started focusing on it at the end of 2022, and over time, they have shown that the business can consistently be profitable. And I think as Uber actually starts building out more of these partnerships with Robotaxi networks, we should start seeing their profitability expand. And this potential increase in profitability is starting to be reflected in Uber's numbers. For 2025, there are 43 analysts covering this stock on Yahoo Finance, and they have an average EPS estimate of $2.31 compared to this year where they're expecting $1.89. And price targets right now are reflecting a potential upside of 50% for this stock. The average price target is currently sitting at $90 compared to the stock price, which is currently sitting at $61. We also have a high price target of $120. And right now, Uber's valuation is trading in line with the rest of the market. Its forward P ratio is sitting at 25.38. And for a company that's growing by 20% year over year and could potentially accelerate beyond that, I think a valuation of 30 to 35 could easily be warranted for this company. When I look at Uber, I think there's a few different interesting things with this company. The first is that they have built out such a strong network effect that I think that is going to be important into the future. Whether it's partnering with robotaxi companies or even the potential of getting acquired by a company. I could see someone like Tesla coming in and actually acquiring or looking at least to acquire an Uber or a Lyft to try and help build out their robotaxi network at a quicker pace and become a #1 player. Especially if they're competing with Waymo and Google, I think that one of the ways Tesla could try and get a leg up is by making an acquisition. But for me, I'm kind of sitting on the sidelines and looking at Uber. I think it needs to drop into that $40 to $50 range for me to really start getting interested. I don't know if it's going to go down that low. I think it'd be very interesting if it did, especially if they hold true with some of their predictions of how much they're expecting to grow over the next couple of quarters. But remember, don't buy a company just because some random guy on YouTube talked about it. Make sure you are doing your own research and looking into companies that meet your risk tolerance as well as your time horizon. With all of that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like down below and subscribe for more videos like this one. And as always, guys, have a wonderful rest of your day. And for the joke of the day, what do you call a broke Santa Claus? Check the comments down below for the answer. Thanks for watching.